Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and today I want to chime in on the discussion going on amongst the community about the new abilities being added to Bard in Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward. So for those of you who don't know, the Live Letter 21 aired on May 21st, and in that live letter, they showcased and detailed some of the new abilities for all the existing jobs, as well as some for the 3 new jobs we haven't yet gotten to play. And amongst those changes, or additions I should say, was the addition of a new song for Bard, the Wanderer's Minuet. We're going to talk about this in detail during this video, but it sparked a lot of heated debate on the official forums, on Reddit, pretty much anywhere that talks about Final Fantasy XIV in public. So I want to throw my 2 cents into the frying pan, because that's definitely what this topic is, and just give you guys my opinion on it. Real quick, like I said, it's my opinion. Feel free to disagree with it and discuss it in the comment section below. I would say to try and be civil, but I have a feeling this is a topic where people aren't going to really be that civil. Regardless, what do you say we get started? So like I said, they gave us details on the new abilities, and amongst them was the Wanderer's Minuet and all the things that it brings to the Bard job. It is a new song, and thus it needs to be cast just like the other songs do. So it does have that 2.5-second cast time like foes and whatnot already have. It costs no MP to maintain, however, and it only affects the Bard themselves. On top of that, you can actually sing other songs while you have Wanderer's Minuet running. So don't feel like this inhibits your ability to use Foe's Requiem, Ballad, or Paean. However, the way it affects the Bard's combat style is very, very, very interesting. So when you are singing Wanderer's Minuet, as I said, it's not costing any MP. What it does is it adds a cast time to all of your abilities and prevents you from auto-attacking anymore. However, you get a massive damage increase on all of your abilities. So it's kind of a weird thing, because Bard has always been known as the super mobile job that does DPS and also has these supporting features. Now they have a song where they can root themselves in place. Not even root themselves. You're not actually rooted. You can still move while you have Wanderer's Minuet on. You just have cast time, so it will interrupt your cast times. So because of this, people are saying they've turned Bard from a Bard, you know, the mobile archer type thing, into a black mage that needs to root themselves in place and just be a turret. However, I would like to share my outlook on what this ability has actually done for the Bard job. Okay, so here it is. Here's how I think it's going to play into the job. And keep in mind, this is still just assuming they get all the numbers right, and it's definitely a damage increase while you're standing still, regardless of all the debuffs that it afflicts onto you and the buffs that it gives you. In fights where you need to be super mobile, Bard will probably be exactly the same, because you're never going to have an opportunity to stop and cast Wanderer's Minuet. Remember, you have to stand still for 2.5 seconds and cast this ability. So that plays into when you're going to effectively be able to use it. And if those windows aren't that long, then you won't be effectively using it very often. So let's take turn 11, for example. You're very mobile in that fight, especially during the ad phase. The ads are being kited around. Bard probably needs to stay in range to split the damage from the one of them. They need to be dodging the line AoEs that come out, the lasers. They need to make sure they move the fork lightnings away from the group. They need to make sure that they're moving with the group. They move out of the gravity wells. All of those things, you would never use Wanderer's Minuet in this scenario, because you're constantly moving. It would be a damage decrease to have those cast times and need to interrupt them in order to move. So it would play exactly the same with a bunch of new abilities. However, in fights where you are able to find opportunities to stand still or move very little, you know, like if you need to like sidestep a little bit and interrupt yourself once, that still might be a damage increase in that form, depending on the potency increase of the abilities. In fights like that, Wanderer's Minuet is going to make you a better DPS. Think about turn 10, the first coil of the first turn of the final coil. Think about the ad phase with the sons and daughters of Amjagud. If you have the opportunity to stand still, if your tanks just position them correctly and they don't turn it and hit you with a crackle hiss or a tail and you don't need to move at all, then that's a minute to a minute and a half where you could be singing Wanderer's Minuet and just be doing more damage, which to me is just an all-around buff. Yes, you can't just run around wildly if you wanted to. You're more controlled. Your actions need to be thought about a little bit more, but you still have all the same mobility you had before, but you can now look for opportunities where you can use this additional damage buff when moving is not necessary. It's not something you want to keep up for the entire fight and never turn it off. You want to only use it when it's going to actually be a benefit to you. And that is why I think Wanderer's Minuet is a great addition to the Bard's playstyle. A lot of people complain that Bard doesn't do as much damage as the other jobs, which is completely subjective because I've seen Bards tear it up on the DPS floor. But it's fair to say that their maximum DPS ceiling is lower than a lot of jobs unless a fight is super mobile, in which case Bards are usually king. So a lot of people wanted an opportunity to be able to do damage comparable with the melees and with the casters of the game. And this is a fair trade-off in my opinion, where you give up that mobility to get on their level, I guess I'll have to say, where you are buffing your DPS to be in, you're just becoming an even better DPS. It's a song that increases your DPS, and nobody else's. That is the way that I like to look at this. But there are a few things that do concern me, so let's talk about those real quick. So we realistically have to look at a few things. We have to remember there are no auto attacks during this. So Barrage has a much different integration to this ability, and I do think it actually has its own effect under Wanderer's Minuet. We'll talk about that in a second. The bigger thing is River of Blood procs for Bloodletter, Blunt Arrow, and Repelling Shot. Those, you have to consider that those might just completely fall to the wayside. The DPS increase in this form needs to be so much to the point where you don't even need to use Bloodletter, or Bloodletter needs to have an additional effect that makes it even better than Heavy Shot and makes it worth interrupting your global cooldown to use. I don't know how they're going to balance this part yet. This is an important part, in my opinion, being sort of, I guess, a valid opinion in the first place, is if these things end up being done properly to the point where Bloodletter is still able to be used and still DPS increase. Or does this just become an ability when you're in your mobile form? It's going to be interesting to see how they balance that all out. But what's more interesting is the way that Barrage is going to interact with Wanderer's Minuet. Now, they haven't said anything official, or at least nothing I've seen, that says that Barrage is going to have its own effect under Wanderer's Minuet, because you have no auto attacks for Barrage to affect. However, if we look at this clip that you've basically been watching almost the entire video at this point, you can see that the Bard uses Barrage right there while under the effect of Minuet. At least I'm almost positive that that's what that is, that's Barrage. And then it looks like he goes ahead and casts Heavy Shot. We, again, don't know that for sure. It might be just a brand new ability that they're casting. And unleashes like 10 to 12 arrows all at once. We don't know this for certain, but it could be that Barrage, instead of affecting your auto attacks, now actually buffs one of your abilities to be different or perform differently, or it may enable an ability under this specific form. I don't know, but it looks a lot to me like they use Barrage, then use an ability to expend all the Barrage stacks or something like that. Not even stacks, but like all of the Barrage arrows at your disposal that you would have had for 10 seconds. Because leaving the form for 10 seconds just to use Barrage is probably a DPS loss, considering you'd have had to have casted the song to get into Minuet, then have canceled it, which doesn't eat your global cooldown, but it's still annoying, and then you would have had to cast it again to get back in the Minuet after the 10-second window for Barrage. I'm really interested to see how it all plays out, but I think overall this is a good change for the Bard. It now rewards you for finding opportunities in the fight where you don't need to move, or that mobility isn't actually a strength, it's just a useless aspect of your job. Wow, I have all this mobility, but I don't need to move for a minute and a half. Why don't I do more damage for that entire minute and a half? It's going to be interesting seeing the theory crafters find out exactly how many global cooldowns you need to cast for Wanderer's Minuet to be worth casting. It's not going to be something you just use permanently and just run around the fight and be like, oh, well, I have cast times now, so I guess while I have this up, I just won't DPS on the move. That's not how it works at all. It's a balance of finding when that mobility and damage is more beneficial than the ability to stick in one place like a Black Mage, like a turret, and do even more damage. I think overall, it's a great dynamic being added to the Bard. It's a great change. It should increase their outgoing DPS, hopefully increase their outgoing DPS to be even closer to on par with the current melee jobs in the game, but which, by the way, could totally just be closer, but not totally up to that point because of the new abilities all the other jobs are getting as well. I'm really interested to see this interaction. I think they did a good thing with this, but that's just my opinion. I know you all at home have your own opinion, so share them in the comment section below. Again, try to be civil. That's probably lost on this topic because this is a very heated debate right now, but that's just my opinion. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. I'll be doing videos like this for all of the new job abilities, assuming they're actually something that's interesting to talk about, which they all pretty much are. So anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one, and until then, take care.